Welcome to Zion's Roar Ministries, boldly proclaiming Yeshua, the conquering King, with foundations in the Hebrew scriptures of the Tanakh, accompanied by Jewish context and rabbinical insights. Zion's Roar Ministries declares that Yeshua is the salvation of God, just as he revealed to his servants, the prophets. And now, here's the founder of Zion's Roar Ministries, Rick Wagner.
All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, especially you folks that are coming back from vacations and off to kiddos and family visitations and all that. We've got some other folks that are on their way. They texted me, said they're running just a little behind, but they're on their way. And then we got some folks that are going to be out. So we've got a wide variety. It's that time of year, summertime, where everybody's out and about and dealing with things. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I have a few announcements that I thought I'd make before we do the lighting and all and that sort of thing. And so the first thing I wanted to announce is for those of you that remember April Gregory. She and her mother came to our studies back when we were still in the home, early days. She was battling cancer, and she's moved home. And so she's not battling it anymore. She's healthier than we are now. And probably won't be soon till we run across her all aglow with glory. So looking forward to that. But she did pass away. Hey, John and Tiffany, they're on the stream. Hi, guys. Good to see you. I know Kenneth mentioned he was on, and Dad Richard's there. And so we got folks here, there, and everywhere. So that's great. But April did pass away. I think it was yesterday. And so in any event, the funeral service for those that knew her and may be interested in attending is going to be the 22nd at 12:30. And it's going to be at the New Harvest Church on Martin Luther King Boulevard, about 5201 Martin Luther King Boulevard. So, Julie, did you have any more information on that you knew of? I know you were trying to get to where you could see her but couldn't. Yeah. Well, see. Yeah. That's good. That's good. Yeah. Everybody calling and talking. Yeah. Burning up. Yeah. Yeah, see, that was the deal. We knew she was in the hospital, but yeah. She was in the hospital. We knew she was in the hospital, but they would not let visitors into the hospital. And so then they sent her to the hospice. And then she was on the phone 24/7 with everybody trying to reach her, and kind of wears you out too. So she's ready. She's happy. See, that's the Paul thing right there. Whatsoever state I find myself in, there with me to content. She was content to stay. She was content to go. She's, yeah, we really enjoyed her. I missed her a lot. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We missed her, but hey, guys, come on in. Yeah. Well, in any event, right? Yeah. She need a little bit of rest. Hopefully, she got some there. But in any event, her services will be the 22nd. So if anybody wants some more information on that, just give me a shout. And okay. Oh, oh, good. Just in time, huh? Awesome. That God's always right on time, isn't he? For those of you watching from home didn't hear that, we recently made our donation. Our Tzedakah box is full. We just pitch in our spare change each week, and when it fills up, we donate it to a local charity. And so we just pick one. And so this time we picked Yukon Mobile Mills, and I believe we got a picture of it, so I'll probably play during the intercession period. But intermission period. That's how you know you're in a Bible study, right? An intercession period. Intermission, but we ended up with $400 worth of change in that box. That's pretty amazing when you think about it, and that's just spare change that you never miss, coming home each day that would have just fell into the couch, but instead made it into the Tzedakah box. Went to Yukon Mobile Mills, and Wayne was just saying that they were grateful to have it and said it came in right in time because they were out of stuff. Donations are down. The demand is up. And so they went straight to Sam's with that and bought some more supplies. So that's good news. We're happy to hear that. So that is good. We've emptied the box now, so we've started it up again. I had a little starter change in there, and then I've seen people already throwing change in tonight. So we'll start working on filling it up again, and then we'll pick somebody else to donate to. And so, yeah, it's going pretty good. I like that it's working that. Speaking of which, I had a suggestion this week from one of our members, and I'll throw this out to you as part of the announcement. The world's in a mess. I guess you've noticed, but. A lot of things have been coming out supporting one group or the other, or this, that, or the other. And I had a suggestion this week that, maybe we ought to just do something nice for our local PD, for the officers there, and just let them know that, we recognize it's not everybody's a bad guy, and there's some good, hardworking folks there that are maintaining order and protecting society and all that. And so I thought I'd throw that out to you guys to see what you thought, see if anybody was interested. Maybe we could get together. I don't know what we'd do, but do something, get together and, bring something down to the PD or something. One of the problems is, it's difficult to just take, cookies or brownies or stuff because, unfortunately, they can't trust. It might have bleach or glass or any of these other things you've seen on the news this week. So, we'd have to figure out something that would be, useful to them and still beneficial, and let them know that there are those that appreciate the service. Some packaged stuff, maybe a little basket of some sort. Anyway, it's just an idea. Thought I'd throw it out to you guys to see what you thought. And so the local group, I've thought about stuff for, that before, but I didn't want to push that agenda on my own. But somebody else suggested it, so I figured I'd throw it out there and see what you thought. I know the church does stuff on a regular, annual basis almost for the firemen, but I don't know that anybody ever does anything for the PD because everybody loves a fireman. That's 1 year maybe, yeah. So anyhow, something to think about. If you guys start thinking some ideas or something, just let me know, and we'll put our heads together and come up with something. So that was one idea that came up this week. The other thing is we're about due to do a cleaning day. We've got summertime and all the stuff that comes with that. So if anybody's interested in getting together for a cleaning day or something, let me know, and we'll try to figure out a mutual time that we can get in and do that. Having said that, it will have to wait until after my vacation because we are leaving on vacation because my wife insists that I do such things. That's who I'm going to blame. But yeah, I'm ready. Yeah, it's okay. This year I'm ready to get out of town too. Oh, what a mess. I think everybody needs to get out this year, don't they? But anyway, we will be going on vacation. We're only taking a week, but we're leaving. We're trying to maximize the weekend and the holiday and all that. So I'll probably have to cancel 2 nights because we're going to leave on a Friday and come back on a Friday, basically. So July 3rd, that's the weekend of the 4th of July, and July 10th, we will not have Shabbat Bible study, and I've posted that on the website. So if any of you forget, you can log in there and see. But we're gonna get out of town, and the boys are gonna go with us. We were gonna have the full load, and maybe a last trip. I don't know. He's got this interest that who knows where, what all's going to take place. But in any event, we are heading out, and it's going to be a good time. We're really, really looking forward to us all being together and having a good time. So that'll be it. If you'll pardon me for a couple of nights, so we can go do that once in a while. And then when I came back, I've had a couple of suggestions that I will just throw past you, and you guys tell me your thoughts. But I've had a couple suggestions from multiple people about expanding what we're doing, and particularly maybe adding another night, either a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night or something like that. And suggestions have been, one suggestion was we could make it like a movie night and play some DVD videos of things that are, prophetic videos and things like that, of stuff that we can discuss and as a group. Other suggestion was, well, let's eliminate the current events from the Bible study night so we can go straight into Bible study, and we'll do current event updates and discussions on the optional night. And then what I would like to do when I thought about having an optional night is I would really like to see us organize a focused prayer effort so that we're doers of the word and not hearers only, because the world needs it right now. And I'm talking about some strategic spiritual warfare prayer engagement as a group, coming together in a corporate body, breaking off 2 by 2 so we can put 10,000 to flight. And, here's the deal. I know these things must be what's going on prophetically in our land. I know they must be. But until we're pulled out, we're still deployed in the war zone. And I think that the body of Christ should be making a stand in the heavenlies against the principalities and the powers, as long as we're here. And that's something that's kind of important to my heart, that I would like to see start to take practice. So I've had that suggestion to expand what we're doing and add. Adam wants to know if my vacation is to see the world's largest pistachio. If there is one, yeah, we'll go see it, because we've done the ball of yarn and the peanut and everything else. So who knows what we'll find. I'm sure my wife will plot out a course for us. There's no telling. But anyhow, there's been this, I've had 2 or 3 people now talk to me about expanding another night. I don't know what anybody's level of interest is in that. I'm happy to do it, I think, frankly, because I would like to be able to do some additional stuff, and that would give us an opportunity to do it. I also had a suggestion to even go so far as to let's just kick it off as a Sunday morning service in the whole 9 yards, and which is kind of an interesting concept. It would give me the opportunity to do some topical teaching and preaching on some other things besides the verse by verse. On the other hand, I also recognize, my goal is never to intrude upon anyone else's relationships and flocks and home churches and all that sort of stuff. So it's something I've been praying about since it was suggested to me. And it's not the first time it's been suggested, but it keeps rotating around. And so anyway, been in prayer about that, so you guys can be as well. Kind of think about, well, basically all that wraps up into just the idea of expanding what we're doing. Instead of the 1 night a week study, to start getting more active in many different areas. And I am certainly open to that. But it'd be important to see what you guys think and whether there's involvement or not and that sort of thing. So those are some things to think about, pray about, and get back to me on your thoughts and those sort of things about. What's that? Well, that was just one of the nights that was thrown out. I mean, I've had the suggestion, just do Wednesdays and Sundays like a regular church, and do a Friday night Bible study, and so all that. And so my first thoughts when all that started happening, I says, well, first I've got to clear that with the missus who's, what the demands and that. But she was good with it. So so I thought, well, I'll throw it out to you guys to see what you think. So you guys think about it, pray about it, let me know what you think about it. And like I said, we might, we could go that direction. I don't know. But there's so much going on. The time is so short that I've felt an urge to do more than I'm doing. And we've got the building. It's not, it's a shame it sits here all week, so there's some things we could probably do. But like I said, part of my focus was, getting into some real strategic prayer efforts and things that we could do. We'll see. So pray about that. What's that?
I said it could be all of them, just not do like something every Tuesday, or like this week is going to be this, and next week is going to be this.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Just rotate what we do each alternating week on the spare night, and like I said, there's a lot of things we can do. I just need input from you guys to tell me, A, is that something you'd support and even be interested in, and B, what would we like to see, and that sort of thing. So that's been percolating in my heart for a while, but now there's other people that are starting to come to me about it, and so it's starting to seem like maybe, here's the deal. I want to do whatever the Lord wants to do with this, whether it's ramping it up, ramping it down, or whatever it is. And so I've been in a lot of prayer about it. I had somebody sent me some information yesterday that I was looking into that really just urged me to do more. And so it was almost a confirmation in a way that, because I've been praying about this all week. So anyhow, you folks at home, same thing. Give me some insights into what you think, and we could still stream the stuff we need. Now, if it turns out to be a video series or something, we probably may not be able to stream that because of all the copyright stuff. But if it's a current event update where we're looking at events and prophetic stuff, we can probably do that. If it's a prayer meeting or something, maybe we'll figure that out. So. Not really what I had in mind, but but who knows? So the recordings of the Nephilim might be though. So there's some there are some stuff out there. I've got a few series like that, and there's the the Before the Wrath video. I don't know if you've seen this one that's come out about the teaching of the rapture tied to the the Jewish wedding, the Galilean wedding, and all that. And I've got these videos and things and stuff on the Ark of the Covenant and where they might be. And, there's different things like that we could do. But anyway, it would take another night of the week or day or whatever. It's just, do we want to expand what we're doing? And that's kind of what I'm asking you to pray about and think about and get back with me on, because I've been feeling kind of that way, but I've had 2 or 3 people now come to me about those ideas. And so since I'm leaving on vacation and nothing would happen until after that anyway, this gives me an opportunity to give you a couple weeks to think about it, pray about it, and brainstorm, get back to me on your ideas. And then if we decide to do it, okay. Some of you may have gotten a notice, if you ever signed up on my website for updates or emails or whatever, you may have gotten an email blast this week about the Wix app, and you're wondering, what in the world is that? So I had some ask me. Well, what it is the website host that I have the website hosted on has a kind of an app feature where people can download the app. And what it is it's not the full website, but it allows them to see the blog. It allows them to see the gallery photos, and it allows text communications with me in real time, and buzz to my phone from, so while we all communicate through the group me, because we're all part of the membership here, there are visitors to the website and stuff that may want to reach out, or may even could send comments while they were watching, because right now we've got our own people who will comment on the group me through the stream, but this would allow visitors and just people visiting the website, if they wanted to contact and ask questions, comments, or whatever, they could do it through the app, and it goes straight to my phone. So it's mostly a tool for the website interaction. So if you were confused about, do I need this, do I not need this, what is this, that's what it is. So I wanted to throw that out to you. All right, I think that's almost all. I say almost all because I got one more thing. Is each year we try to put together some little get-together field trip. You might remember we did the Tabernacle tour one year and went out and checked it all out. And we had talked at the close of the season last year about the Passion Play in Eureka Springs, Arkansas. And if you're familiar with the Great Passion Play, how many of you have been there or ever? No, some never been there, some have, maybe recently or not recently, probably been a while. Me and my wife did, but as a group, as a Zion's Roar group, I was thinking about maybe scheduling a trip. There is I pulled it up here, I'll put it on the line for the website. The 2020 season is open, and these are the dates. And so it's mostly a weekend kind of thing. And so I was thinking if we wanted to do this this year where we could all load up, the tickets, right at the base rate for the tickets is $30, but if we have 15 or more as a church group, we can get a discount of, I think it's 15%, which brings it to like $25 and some change. There's other things there. That's right. There's the Bible Museum. They've got a collection of Bible manuscripts going back to Gutenberg. They've got what they call the Holy Land Tour, and they've got different little stops set up along the way where you can go and get a little teaching at each little stop with, the potter's house and Jesus saw in the water and all that. So there's some meals there and gift shops and, all that stuff. The question is, are we interested in doing it? And that's really why I'm putting out. And if so, what date do we need to pick? Because we need to get it on the calendar and get it scheduled. When it is not super hot. Well, okay, notice the season is July and August. We could look at a September date, if you like. October, perhaps, is a cooler day. But you guys tell me what you think. We could. What I will do is I will put out the link to this schedule on the group me, and then you guys take a look at it, see what dates seemed like they would be the best. And then, give me your ideas if you're interested in doing it. And then if you're interested in doing it, we can get a group. Okay. How in the world do you know about fall break this far ahead? Okay. Well, whatever fits the schools the best or whatever. Yeah, I guess you can't keep up with that. Well, keep in mind that if we went, it would be a road trip. I don't know if we could rent a bus or a van or something like that or not. Otherwise, it'd probably be a convoy or something. But we'd probably need rooms for the night because it's over late and it's a pretty good drive up there. Do you remember? It was about 6. I don't remember what it was. I don't know, 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours, something like that. It's in Eureka Springs. Eureka Springs article. Yeah, I'm thinking it was 4 or 5 hours. Yeah, 4 or 5 hours. So, yeah. So, like I said, it would be a late night thing. You'd probably need a room for the night and get up and come again. So I will send out some information on that in Group Me. But those are some things for everybody to start considering. So I will put it out on the Group Me as a reminder to everybody, all these different things to be thinking of, and you guys can start talking about it amongst yourself and get back with me with your thoughts. Like I said, none of that will probably be taking place till after the return of vacation, so it just gives everybody a couple, 3 weeks to kick it around.
Oh, mine says 4 hours and 13.
Okay, so somewhere between 4 and 5 hours is basically what it's going to be. All right, well, that's really all I've got by way of announcements, and I do not intend to do current events because it does carry us long. we could do that on another night. Although I have seen plenty of stuff this week that would lead you to do that. But let's go ahead and get started with our study. Julie, if you'd like to do the, here, I'm going to let you put this on so people can hear you do the blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu leot or legoyim v'natan lanu et Yeshua Meshikienu or Haolam. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctified us with his commandments and commanded us to be a light unto the nations, and who gave to us Jesus, the Messiah, the light of the world.
All right, amen. Thanks. Okay, well, we've got the candlelight blessing. We're bringing in the Shabbat, so it's about time for the blessing of the bread as well. If everybody's got a piece of bread here, we'll go ahead and do that. If you know the blessing, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. Amen. Then, of course, that's followed with the blessing of the wine. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Borei pri hagafen. Amen. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who creates the fruit of the vine. Amen. All righty. Well, that brings us to study time. Oh, we got some more folks that just missed it. Oh, looky there. Hallelujah. Welcome, 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 guys. Oh, my goodness. We just doubled the congregation right there. Welcome back, buddy. It's good to see you guys. Bless the Lord. Well, it's good to see you guys. Well, hey, good to see you again. Steph, how are you doing? Bless you. It's good to see you guys. Now, we still have plenty of blood and wine left, but you missed the... We just finished right before you guys walked in. But it is good to see you guys. All right, well, we are about ready. You're just in time to actually start the study is what you're in time for. So who would like to open us up with a word of prayer to bathe all of this in the Spirit of God as we begin? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you for
we are exploring some ideas about microphones where you can pick up audiences, and I'm sticking my headset off into the wind trying to pick up everybody's comments. But one thing at a time, I guess. Well, we've been in Revelation 17, and of course that's where we still are, and you guys know how this works. It could be we may still be here when Jesus comes. I don't know. We just take our time through it as we progress. And so that's what we're doing. Let me bring up our passage here. Put this up on the screen. Last week we were covering verse 6. We covered kind of the last part of verse 6. We spent a little bit of time discussing the blood of the martyrs of Yeshua and the blood of the saints, and what all that actually entails, which is typically beyond what, if you missed that, just go back and watch them. There's no way to recover all of that. But last week we kind of focused a little bit on this last part of the verse, which has to do, that says, when John saw her, he wondered with great admiration. Now, most people read that, and that doesn't mean what it used to mean. The idea is he's puzzled, he's amazed, he's astonished at what he is seeing. And what I tried to bring out last week is not the fact that he was astonished and amazed, but the fact that the angel was puzzled that he was puzzled. You see, the angel's like, wait a minute, you ought to know this. All right? And so what I did last week is I took you through why he should know this. And the idea here is that the corruption is taking place within the church. And that's what boggled the mind of John. And the angel's like, hey, why are you puzzled? And I took you back through the kingdom parables of Yeshua. Do you remember those? Where we talked about the wheat and the tares, sowed amongst the tares. Remember, each of those was the same parable, just not understood. Remember, the significant thing was Jesus came out of the house and went to the seashore to teach the parables. Out of the house, by the sea. And biblically, the house was always representative in pattern form of home, the family, all right? House of God, the house of the Lord, wherever the house of Israel, the house. That's essence, right? The believing deal. But the sea was always representative of what? Yeah, sin, chaos, evil spirits, remember, uncontrolled, the world. The devil, when Jesus is trying to cross the sea and the storms, the tempest rages and peace be still. The sea and that chaotic abyss, if you will, the darkness on the face of the deep, right, and all those sort of things, always has a negative connotation in Scripture. So it's very significant when you're reading the passage in those parables, which is in Matthew 13. Yeshua's kingdom parables, that you understand that, first of all, he comes out of the house to go to the seashore to do this teaching. I don't think that's by accident. And when he begins the teaching, he's talking about this mutant mustard herb that turns into a giant tree. And we've heard that taught, it's a nice thing. It just shows the church is going to grow and be a shelter for... No, wait, read what he's saying. He's talking about an abnormality amongst this herb, which is the least of the herbs, but becomes a great tree. And then who lodges in the branches? The fowls of the air. Okay, here's an easy way to remember what the pattern for a fowl is. Fowl. That's unclean. The unclean birds lodge in its branches. What does that mean? It means that there's corruption within the church. What does it mean when there are tares growing amongst the wheat? And the servants say to the master, didn't you sow good seed? And what's the master said? He says, an enemy has done this. See, he's not responsible for the tares coming into the wheat. An enemy did it. Who's the enemy? Well, the adversary, Satan, all right? And so what happens is there's that corruption coming into the church. You see the same thing with the woman who hid the yeast in the meal, right? Well, what does yeast always represent? Sin. What's the meal? Particularly 3 measures of meal. If you go back, the first reference to 3 measures of meal happens to be what's considered the fellowship meal, when Abraham skedaddled Sarah to prepare a meal real quick for the Lord and the 2 angels that came on the way to Sodom and Gomorrah, right? So the idea that you're going to throw yeast into something that you're going to feed the Lord, you're going to throw sin into something that you're going to feed the angelic. You see, those are the connotations that are in those parables. So every one of those parables in Matthew 13, let's see if we can just go there. I'm not going to read through them all again, but just so you see the references to them. In Matthew 13, here's another way to remember. 13 is typically considered what? An unlucky number. Well, it just so happens these parables are in Matthew 13. Incidentally, where does the Antichrist first make his appearance in the book of Revelation? Chapter 13. All right. So, yes, I get it. That's coincidence. All right. But it certainly is a memory peg. All right. You can certainly use that as a memory peg. So, Matthew 13:1 has to do with the parable of the sower. He talks about the seed that falls on the wrong type of soil, right? And the fowls come and devour it, and they corrupt it, they choke it, all the things that go on. So this very first parable tells you that the fowls are bad guys, right? All right, the next parable that comes in here, they say, why are you talking in parables? He says, because it's given to you to understand the mystery, but it's not given to them. Jesus did not teach in parables in order to make things clear. He taught in parables to communicate to you, the believer, and confuse and baffle the enemy. That's what was going on. So he speaks in those parables. And as you look through these, the next one is the sower being explained. He talks about the sower and the word. He talks about the weeds. These are the tares amongst the wheat. And Dennis had a good observation last week. The way you tell a tare from a wheat is that when it reaches maturity, it doesn't bow its head. It's an arrogant weed. I thought that was pretty interesting little concept to think about. So you get that parable. Then you get the mustard seed that grows into this, which is supposed to be the least of all seeds, but it becomes the greatest among herbs. It become a tree. Not a herb anymore. It grew into a tree. That's not right. That's genetic confusion right there. That's something becoming that's not. It became giant-sized, if you will. And then the birds of the air came and lodged in the branches, and we just saw that the birds are negative. So the kingdom of heaven, like the woman who puts the leaven in. And so the whole point of me bringing you through those kingdom parables is the angels talking to John saying, why aren't you puzzled? You got the briefing. You got the memo. I know you were there. Do you guys ever have meetings at work where you got that one clueless person that sits in there, and after it's over, they act like they had no clue? What? I didn't know that. Yeah, we talked about it in the meeting. It was on the PowerPoint slide. It was in the handout. It was in the email. Did you read it? All right. See, that's what the angel's doing with John here. He's like, why are you confused? Because not only did Jesus brief you, you wrote about it in your letters. Now, there's some debate as to the timing of the letters. Did he write the letters before Revelation? Did he write the letters after Revelation, right? Well, that's, something for scholars to, bicker on. But if he wrote them before, he sure should have known, because he talks about the mystery of iniquity that's already at work within the church, right? He talks about those that were of us, but they went out. So it would be evidence that they were not all of us. And that spirit of Antichrist is already at work. So if he wrote it before, he should have understood it. If he wrote it after, I think he got it. Now, we talked about how Lucifer disrupted the entire universal order from the inside out. It was a rebellion in heaven, right? Lucifer said, I will be like the Most High. When in fact, he was the anointed cherub that covereth. That covereth what? There's only 2 references to a covering cherub in Scripture. And one is a reference to Lucifer, who was the anointed cherub that covereth. 2 were the angels on the Ark of the Covenant. the mercy seat. In other words, the covering cherub is the one that sat right at the throne. This is as close as you can get to the inside track. Everybody follow? So if you've corrupted your way, which is what the Bible says happened, you did it from the very inner sanctum. Judas Iscariot was the disciple who betrayed Jesus. Where was he at? Inner circle. He was close enough Jesus could hand him a sop to eat. And it's interesting. We're going to get into a little bit more about that tonight. So the idea of betrayal from within is the MO of Satan, a modus operandi. That is how he works best. Take a look at your own nation right now. What's the problem with getting anything done? Is opposition all on the outside? It's coming from within, isn't it? There's always that deep state betrayal from within. The Roman emperors, remember we talked about Julius Caesar, stabbed on the Ides of March. Et tu, Brute? He was his close personal friend. What did David say? It was my own friend that lifted up his heel against me. We went all into the Trojan War. How did those guys get in there and defeat Troy? There's a bunch of Greeks and a horse. They brought them in. They didn't know they were bringing them in, but they brought them in and were overthrown. And that's the same pattern that John is seeing in this chapter, and I'll try to make it a little bit more clear as we continue. So these are kind of what we talked about last week. Last week I also took you back and we did a real fast refresher of the last four churches. You guys remember? Our big study was years ago when we were in that chapter, but basically just the short version was Thyatira. The idea of the seven churches in Revelation chapter 2 and 3, they're in a if you plot them out on a map, they're kind of in a clockwise circle, which implies time, all right? Clockwise time. You started with Ephesus, you end with Laodicea. But the idea is the structure of the letter shifts at the fourth church. The promises, to he who overcomes shift their location in the letter. And all scholars make note of it where they appear. Sometimes they're in the middle of the letter, and sometimes they're at the end of the letter. But what happens is the first three churches have those admonishments in one part of the letter. The last four have it in a different part of the letter. So there's a pattern there that should be indicated. Well, the pattern, I believe, is simply this. The three first churches, that stage has come and gone. The last four churches have marched through history and each have remained concurrent with one another. Everybody knows what I mean by concurrent, right? If you're serving a concurrent sentence, you may, they're still there. Thyatira represented in our model, if you look at the promises and everything that has to do with it, was after Pergamus brought in the Babylonian idolatries and mysteries, right? Thyatira was the next church. Well, what arose out of that was the dark ages of Catholicism, where many wicked things were going on, but Catholicism continues today. What happened in the midst of that? Well, there was a priest named Luther who became disconcerted with teachings of the church and decided that he had stumbled across the scripture that said the just shall live by faith. And so Jesus speaks to that church and says, you have a name that you live, but you're dead. Because what he did is he broke from the Catholic Church with the 95 Thesis on the wall, but he didn't change much of the doctrine or the problems. All he did was he got away from, he understood that the idea of indulgences and all that was wrong, and it needed to be a faith confession that you were saved by faith and not by works, right? But that's about as far as it went. And in fact, he was so excited to get out, he thought, aha, I'm gonna win the Jewish people over now, because we're not doing all this Babylonian mystery stuff in the church anymore. Except for when the Jews said, no thanks. You know what happened to him? He became a violent anti-Semitic, and he was even worse he was even worse than the Catholics have been to the Jewish people. And so a lot of people don't realize it, but there was a lot of persecution against the Jewish people committed by the Protestant churches. And that kind of gets glossed over a lot in the histories, but that's true. And that's why I've told you that you can't pin everything on it's the Catholic Church that's being spoken of in here. Well, no, it's going to be a little bit of all of them. So next thing that happened, of course, coming out of the Protestant Reformation, the next church was Philadelphia in the text, which represents that period of reawakening as to the truth that was birthed out of the Protestant movement. And that typically fits into the history of the colonial period of America when there was the great revivals and we began to kind of evangelize the world and send out missionaries everywhere and preach the gospel. And people were getting saved. People were repenting. And they were doing it because they were hearing sermons about repentance, and what was to come. And that went on for quite a while in American history. And then the new phase came that had to do with health and wealth, and that church of Laodicea, where it became the rule of the people. What do the people want to, what they want to tickle their ears with instead of that message? So that was the overview we did last week to just lay out that church history timeline, because what I'm going to suggest to you here as we start going here is that the beast and the woman are really one mystery. They are working together in concert. Now, I pointed out last week, and it was at the tail end, and folks were getting tired, so if you didn't catch it, I want to reinstate it. The verse starts in Revelation. When we go back to Revelation, it says, when we first start, there's a woman riding the beast, right? Okay, and I saw a woman set upon a scarlet-colored beast. So in Revelation 17:3, his vision has the woman setting on the beast. So you guys all remember school when you had to diagram sentences, right? Which is the subject, which is the object, the direct object, and I see the only ones nodding in recognition are the young folks who go, yeah, I remember that. The rest of us are going, yeah, homeschool mom maybe remembers that I had to teach that. I never liked it. That was not one of my favorite things. I'm getting a lot of nods on that comment. Yeah, okay, I never really liked it. But it is helpful when you start looking at who's the direct object of these two sentences. You see, as we look at this, there's a woman sitting upon a beast. So who's doing the acting and who's doing the receiving? Okay, the woman is the acting upon the direct object of the beast, right? But as we scroll down and we take a look, and the angel says, no, let me tell you something. Why are you marveling? I'm going to tell you the mystery of the woman. He's going to tell you the mystery of the woman and the beast that carrieth her. Now what's happened? Now it's the beast. It's the beast in action. Now that's real subtle, but it's real important. The shift. What John saw, he thought he saw this woman riding the beast of power. But the angel said, no. What's happening here is you have a beast using this woman until he's done. Because remember, the woman is a harlot. And we talked about last night, sadly, what happens to harlot in the real world. Those that engage their services use them, and then you find them dead in a ditch. They're cast aside. They're in a dumpster, they're in a landfill, they're in a lake. Remember all those things? I mean, I don't want to get off into all that, particularly with all of our children in here, but that's what happens in that line of work. And we get reports all the time, missing person or try to identify this body or whatever, and it always turns out that way. So nothing has changed here. That's exactly what's going to happen. The beast will turn upon the woman. In other words, here's what I'm saying. After the Bible-believing church is caught up, and we're out of here, there will still be here people professing to be of the faith, but they're tares. Remember what Yeshua said in his parable to the angels? No, don't gather them all up. Just wait to the end. Then we'll separate them out and burn the others. We'll bring some into the barn. We'll burn the rest. Right? Well, once you get brought into the barn, what's left to do? Burn the rest. That's what's coming in this tribulation period. Because, see, once we're caught up, there will be those who are still portraying themselves as the church. But see, there's going to be something happening. And this is why I really want to hammer home the point. There's a lot of teaching on this that just focuses strictly on the Catholic Church. I do believe that the Vatican will play a leadership role. I do believe the Vatican will try an ecumenical approach to bring all these people under one tent, but the people he's all bringing under one tent aren't all Catholics. All right? There are terrorists hidden in churches throughout the world. Can we even see that already in evidence right now? Do we see churches taking stands that aren't right biblically? We've seen churches that have promoted homosexuality. We've seen churches who are promoting the ordaining of homosexuality leaders. We've seen them taking stands for various social justice issues, a social justice gospel. There's some anti-Semitism amongst some of these churches that are divesting and boycotting and sanctioning Israel. So there's a lot of stuff going on, quote, quote, under the name of the Lord. See, that's bringing reproach upon the church, the Bible talks about. You see, because one of the reasons that the Jewish people have been so resistant to the gospel is they've seen the record. These people who profess that are the people who keep burning us at the stake, putting us to the sword, abandoning us. So how can that be our God behind that? Because we have a God of covenant. And he said it was an eternal thing. You see that? See the problem? It's not a good witness, but the problem is because it's the enemy. It's the devil. An enemy has done this. And it's corrupted the good news of the gospel for the Jewish people. And so part of what Revelation is about is separating the wheat from the chaff. Then they begin to see. Then they begin to see and call upon the name of the Lord. So this is all about the rise of that power. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens next. So he says, this brings us, I think we're caught up now. He says, I am going to explain to you this mystery about the woman and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not, and yet is. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth, and there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, 1 is, the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and as of the 7, and goeth into perdition. And the 10 horns are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. That is the betrayal that I just warned you was coming. All right? This is, and that's how we find these bodies sometimes. You know, it's not unusual for these folks to leave bite marks on their victim. Some of it's cannibalistic. They may bite off a hunk of flesh. Some of these serial killers and rapists and stuff like that will do that. We always find them. Do we find them fully clothed? No. We find them naked. We find them with bite marks. Have we found them with the bodies burnt where they've tried to destroy any evidence or DNA? Yeah, same thing. So here's what I'm getting at. The demonic spiritual manifests itself in the natural. Criminal activity is an expression of satanic activity. You guys follow? Where do they get such ideas? They're acting out things that are within. That's why people need to understand when you're talking about a law and order. That's kill is hello. So there's a lot in this passage, and we're still trying to figure out what's going on. The angel said he was going to start taking this apart. I'm going to bring it back up here. He's going to explain the mystery of the woman and the beast that carrieth her. That has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. So here he goes, starting in verse 8. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. So let's stop right there. There's a couple things we need to see. The beast. First of all, remember the word for the beast is a violent beast, a dangerous beast. It's not a tame beast. It's not a domesticated beast. By definition, a domesticated beast means that it is in the service of man. All right? A domesticated ox pulls your plow. A domesticated cow provides milk and meat. Right? But a wild beast, a violent beast, is not in the service of man, and in fact, is in opposition and dangerous to man. All right? People go into the jungle and encounter a wild beast, what happens? They get eaten. Instead of eating the beast eats you. Right? So that's exactly what we're looking at here with the word being used in the Greek here. It has to do with this wild beast, which is out to devour mankind. Because Satan goes about as a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. And that's exactly what's going on with this beast. Now, the second thing I want to bring out to you is, first of all, John saw it. And that word see, of course, is Edo. We've discussed that many times before. It has to do with that prophetic perception, vision state. But the first thing he saw was a beast that was. All right? Then he saw a beast that is not. And then, of course, the beast shall. So, you guys tell me, what tense is was? That's right, past tense. What tense is not? Present tense. What tense is shall? Future tense. All right. What we want to understand here is he saw a beast that was, had some type of prior existence, but in John's time is not. However, in the future shall be. All right. Now, a lot of people point out this seems to be kind of like a pun because, see, God is he who was, who is, and who is to come. The beast was one who was, is not, and is to come. What happened in the middle? Bingo. And what was the foundation of the church? Who built that? Yeshua, man on a cross, Son of God, Son of Man. You see, something put him down. Something put him down. And he's been restrained ever since. Paul says, he that letteth will let until he be taken out of the way, and then that wicked shall be revealed, right? There's been a restraint upon the kingdom of Satan since the time of Yeshua. Remember when Yeshua first started showing up? What did the demons all scream when they saw him? Yeah, they're like, wait. What have we got to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High? Are you here to torment us before the time? See, they know there's a time of torment coming, but that's still future tense. They're wondering, what is he doing here now? And what did he have to say? Shut up. They knew it wasn't the time. That is right. That seemed that there's knowledge there. They don't know what the time is. They just know it wasn't the time. That's interesting. They're certainly hoping it, right? Then we had others that say, hey, don't send us down into the pit. Let us go into the pigs. Do you want to be in the pit? You want to be in the pigs? We'll take the pigs, all right? Because there's a place of confinement that those spirits are at. And that's all taught in the things we've discussed before. So this beast is not, and yet shall ascend out of the pit. In other words, was put there, but now he's getting out. Yes? Right? Yeah, it starts fading pretty quick. There is no light in the depth. All right, there is no light in the depth. And we're going to talk about the abyss because I do believe that the bottomless pit is the abyss. So if you go into the Greek, the word for pit is the abyss or the deep. The abyss in ancient thought was the watery deep. I think by the English translation of bottomless pit, a lot of people have an idea of a hole in the ground somewhere. And that may be, but I lean more towards the depths and the water world. The darkness was on the face of the deep, upon the abyss. And we are going to talk about why that is as we progress in here. So this beast was, but was not in John's time, but shall ascend once again out of the bottomless pit in later time. So who could that be? What is it? First of all, what was our pattern for the beast to begin with? A beast carrying a woman, or a woman riding a beast. How many remember the very first study when we looked at those two symbols in the ancient mind? Is there a myth that has to do with a beast carrying a woman off? Europa and Zeus. Zeus being the beast, Europa being the woman carried off. And that is the legend of the birth of Europe, Western civilization. Correct? And in the legend and the myth, Zeus transforms himself into a bull, seduces Europa, who climbs on top, and he takes off into the sea. Takes her off to an island where, depending on the version, she either willingly or unwillingly has a relationship with him. And they give birth to children who begin to be the kings of Greece and create Western civilization. Everybody follow? That's the mythology legend. All right. Well, that brings us all the way back to this beast and the rise of the woman, with this idea of Western civilization in Europe and all these things that are tied to it. But we're going to continue to take that apart. What I want you to notice here is, as we read the verse, the angel is real clear to say in the first part of the verse, the beast was, is not, and shall ascend, right? And then how's he close out the verse? The beast was and is not, and yet is. Now, if you were a normal, well-adjusted person, you just read right past that. But you've probably been coming here long enough to know that, okay, if he's repeating himself, he's trying to emphasize something. And notice how he's repeating it. Now we're going to get out. We're going to get out in the weeds, yeah. And yet is in the future tense, yeah. The beast that was, is not, and yet is. In other words, that the beast is there, he's just not on the scene. And yet he shall be. He will ascend. So what you've got is what I like to refer to in Scripture, because you'll see this repeated in patterns, bookends. You got a bookend statement. You got it on one at the beginning of the verse, you got it at the end of the verse. And the bookends kind of contain what's in the middle, but the idea of it becoming in the first and the end. The beginning and the end. The beginning and the end. What did Jesus? What's Scripture say about God? He says, "I've been telling you the end from the beginning. I am the beginning and who can tell you what all's happening." So this beast was around at the beginning, and he's around at the end. So just hold these thoughts as we start moving together to what this beast might be. So some scholars, if you go try to study this out and figure out, you're going to run into a wide variety of opinions. All right, most of the traditional books say, well, it's Nero. Nero was a bad guy burning Christians at the stake, but by John's time, that wave of persecution had passed. But there was a legend about Nero Recidivus. Anybody ever heard this story? All right. So we're going to have to get some history tonight. Nero Recidivus is a legend about Nero. Nero was nuts. Certifiable. All right. Everybody in history knows he weren't right. All right. Now, when we just say nuts, it's easy to wipe that off. We're talking today in our own society about the mental health crisis, right? What are we going to do about law enforcement? Well, we're going to defund them and throw it at money at mental health crisis, right? What is a mental health crisis? Well, some of it's innocent enough and some of it's not. Some mental health crisis is spiritual health crisis, all right? There's voices in their head. There's spiritual demonic presences. There's bad things going on. And so this mental health crisis, Nero was one of those. He was just voices, images, stuff like that. You may remember when we did our study years back where we talked about him gazing through the emerald, trying to see into the spirit realm. That was stuff. You remember that? Yeah, okay. So all that stuff had to do with Nero. Well, the legend was, the history is that eventually Rome got tired of Nero. This guy's nuts. We gotta get rid of him. And so it's a little murky what become of Nero. He either disappeared, he either had his death, and nobody know what became of him. Some legends say, well, he got his neck slashed and they thought he was dead, but he escaped and relived. But since there was no clear-cut answer to Nero's death, conspiracy theory fills the void. What happened to Nero, right? And so the legend became, who was the mortal enemy of Rome during this period of time of ancient history? Anybody know? It was another kingdom. They're kind of the mortal enemy of the United States right now. Yeah, which one? Yeah, pick your poison right there, right? Well, they're not yet. The Ottoman Empire is not in existence right now, so we will. But it's an Islamic. It is Islamic. Who always wants to throw death to the great Satan? Yeah, it's right. Iran, Persia was the enemy of Rome back in that time. There were a number of campaigns that Alexander had fought to bring Greece Empire, and there's always this back and forth. Everybody remember the 300, the Spartans and all that fight? Okay, they're fighting the Persian invasion into Greece, and then Alexander come up and said, well, by golly, I'm going to pay them back, and we're going to march into Persia and whack them, you know. So there was always this tension between what was considered the East and the West. And Euphrates was always the dividing line. Rome never made it past the Euphrates in any significant way. And Persia remained the empire on the other side of the Euphrates. So during this period of time when Nero goes missing and everybody in Rome's turned on him, where might you go? If your own people have turned on you, where might you flee? Take refuge with the enemy, right? So there was a legend that he had fled to the Persians, and that not only is he nuts, but now he's mad. Not only is he mad, but now he's mad. All right, he's mad. And so the legend was the Persians had no love lost for Rome. So the concern was that eventually he was going to come back and invade Rome with an army of Persians. And that was called the legend of Nero Recidivus, the idea that Nero would one day come back to assault Rome, the return. And so a lot of scholars read this into the scenario. There may be some merit to it. I believe it's more pattern merit than anything. But I want you to be aware of that, because if you go trying to research this out in the commentaries, that's the one you're probably going to find the most of, is the Nero. Because the people who really like that the best are the ones that want to make this all past tense stuff that's not prophecy, that's all historical. There are others. There are those that say Judas is in view. Say Judas wasn't around in John's time, but he had been before at the time of the Revelation. And some think he might be coming back. Now, why do they think that? Well, I'm going to get into that a little bit more detail here in a minute. Then there was some that saw it as a reincarnation of Nimrod. That was an interesting concept. Nimrod was in the beginning, Babylon. What's the name mean? What's the name Nimrod mean? Who remembers? Rebel. Means will rebel. That's basically what the name means. He will rebel. He became a mighty one, the Bible says, in the face of the Lord. And so there was the idea that it's some sort of a revival of Nimrod, which to me, has a pretty good pattern fit because we're talking about Babylon to begin with, right? And so it's interesting. Some scholars believe that Nimrod is Gilgamesh. Who's heard of Gilgamesh? All right, got a few. All right. Gilgamesh was the first known hero. And when I use the word hero, what's the word hero mean? Giant. Yeah, it's a giant. Hero was a giant. It was the first hero of the Babylonian Assyrian Chronicles. And we've got the Gilgamesh tales. And Gilgamesh, they have a version of the flood, the deluge, that follows the Gilgamesh epic. But the idea of Gilgamesh in ancient Babylonian was that he was 2/3 God and 1/3 human. In other words, he was a Nephilim. He was the mixture of the angels and the God. And so there were many stories about him trying to gain immortality. He didn't want to die like a human. All right. So where am I going with all this? Well, I don't know. I'm just throwing some stuff out. You may remember a few years back when I brought your attention to this article here. I'll put this up on the screen. Anybody remember this? This is when the BBC announced that they believed they had found the tomb of Gilgamesh. That's right. That's right. Archaeologists in Iraq. Where's Iraq? Babylon. All right, Babylon is Iraq. Believe they found the lost tomb of King Gilgamesh, the subject of the oldest book in history. Now, this is a picture of Gilgamesh, who's believed, here it is, 2/3 God, 1/3 human, holding a big old lion by its back leg, lifting him up. There's 2 or 3 pictures of Gilgamesh just holding lions in a bear hug, and bigger than the lion, larger than the lion, stronger than the lion, those sort of things. But where did they find him? Well, it's interesting that in the Gilgamesh legend, inscribed in clay tablets, Gilgamesh was described to have been buried under the Euphrates. Now, I brought this to your attention because you'll remember in our previous chapters, the Bible is specifically about loosing 4 angels bound in the river Euphrates. And we've talked a lot about how the Babylonians worshiped the gods of the Euphrates and the Euphrates River and what it meant to them. And so the tablets that we have from this period of time says that he was buried under the Euphrates River in a tomb. Well, they say they find it. How did they find it? By the magnetization of the soil. Something was making a magnetic anomaly in the soil. Now, that's never been explained very well, but there was a magnetic anomaly, which may indicate the presence of iron. We talked about the properties of iron in our previous studies. So something was going on. Now, the thing is the article ends and it doesn't tell you anything. Okay, so what did we do with him? And to my knowledge, I've never heard an official article again. Now, there's plenty of internet chatter about the find, but we don't hear much about what become of this tomb of Gilgamesh. So, my question is, if Gilgamesh is a giant, according to the text, Gilgamesh was 11 cubits tall. At a minimum, how big is that? At a minimum, that's 16.5 foot tall. Okay, your standard wall is 8 foot tall. That's 2 stories tall. That's somebody that's 2 stories tall at a minimum. Now the question is, which cubit were they using? The smallest cubit is 18 inches, but there are cubits, depending on your measurement, a royal cubit, Egyptian cubit, those sort of things, that can go all the way up to 25 inches, which is over 2 foot. So if they're using a royal cubit as the measure in these ancient texts, then he's at least 22 foot tall. So here's what we know. According to the text about Gilgamesh, he was somewhere between 16.5 feet to 22 feet tall. That's a pretty tall dude. Either way, that's a 2-story dude. All right. If you found, notice they don't tell us much about the find. Just says, hey, we found Gilgamesh. That is all. Nothing to see here. Please move along. Right? So what? Well, that becomes the question. What did they do? Is he in the basement in the Smithsonian somewhere now? Well, that's what I suspect. See, because I know that it sounds crazy, but we have got some really crazy people in science today doing weird stuff. And the idea of DNA sample from something like that would be not beyond the realm of possibility. And an attempt to clone something or bring something back to life, a Jurassic Park kind of theme. Hey, I don't put it past them to do something like that. There was a time where that would have been crazy, and I wouldn't even have hinted at it. I'm long past since that now. They could very well try something like that. Could that provide something that was, is not, and yet ascends out of the abyss? Remember, we talked about the Euphrates and the legend of the Euphrates. That was the portal into the Gulf. Remember where the Apkallu arose? You guys remember all that? Which was believed to be the entrance to the underworld, the abyss, by the ancients. Now, I know. But something to think about, because I'm going to continue to add some things here, because the beast is referred to as the son of perdition, and Judas is referred to as the son of perdition. We're going to look at those texts. That's why some people say, well, it's going to be Judas reincarnated. I don't think so. I think son of perdition is a descriptor for another reason. All right, and we're going to get into that as we present it. So let me ask you this. If you had to take a guess, what do you think the word Gilgamesh means? What do you think? No, everybody's like, don't ask me. I don't know. Well, the scholars don't either. I looked to see what the pros had to say, because I have an idea of my own. That's dangerous, isn't it? But the scholars says, well, we know that mesh is a word for hero, which is giant, right? A hero. We know that. What we're having trouble with is the Gilga part. We think it may be based off of the word Bilga instead of Gilga, and it's been corrupted, because the word Bilga in the Assyrian, the ancient Assyrian, means ancestor. All right? Ancestor. First hero. That's right. And so they're thinking, aha, we think it's an ancestor hero, first hero. That's Gilgamesh. Well, that's interesting and that's plausible. I mean, they're the pros, and I think that may have some merit. But I cannot help but notice Gilga is a Hebrew word too. Do you remember when Jericho first entered the land, they entered at Gilgal? Wow, Gilgal. Yeah, I remember that. What was the problem in Gilgal? Do you remember when they first come into the land, crossed Jordan? Okay, well, yeah, there's giants when they cross Jordan. They cross Jordan and they're like, oh, there's giants here. That was a problem. But what was the problem for Israel when they first crossed into the land? What did God say they needed to do real quick? What? Not yet. Not yet. But for those at home, he says, start taking out the kill them all, those giants. Not yet. Not make an altar yet. What was wrong with the generation? How long have they been in the wilderness? 40 years. Why were they in the wilderness 40 years? Okay, the elders had disbelieved and rebelled and would not enter the land. And so God said, what? What did he decree upon that generation? That's right. They would die in the wilderness. You're going to be in this wilderness. You said you were worried about dying. Let me fix you up. You're going to stay here till your carcasses fall in the wilderness. Right? And a new generation will come into the land. So what we have is this new generation coming into the land, but what's wrong? They're not circumcised. Bingo. Not circumcised. They hadn't done the circumcisions through that 40 years in the wilderness. First, they had to circumcise everybody under the sign of the covenant. And that's a serious thing because, see, remember Moses? Moses and his Zipporah? There was an angel coming to slaughter, to kill him. And she had to do some quick circumcising to make everything right. Everybody remember that passage? Well, now they're getting ready to go engage the enemy and these giants in an uncircumcised state. That is critical because that's the covenant. Now, if you're in the covenant of God, you become the armies of God, right? If you're not in covenant, there's no sign of the covenant. Why is circumcision a sign of covenant? See, this all builds. Okay, there's shedding of blood. That's good. Okay, you're close. You're right. It's cutting away the foreskin. Skin is what? Flesh. All right? You're cutting away the flesh. In other words, it's symbolic of through the blood, the disposal of the flesh. That's the sign of the covenant. And where did it take place? On the man's anatomy, on his reproductive organs. All right? Because that is the procreator. That's what creates seed. That's what creates the next generation, the next generation, the next generation. That's all very important when we start talking about foundations and conception. And all this is going to build. I know it's random pieces right now, but it's going to build as we go there. So when they crossed into the promised land, they had to stop and circumcise everybody, and they did it at Gilgal. All right? Gilgal means, in Hebrew, Gilgal is a Hebrew word commonly interpreted circle. Well, it means circle. It does mean circle or wheel. Sometimes it's interpreted as wheel. But what is the idea of a circle or a wheel?
Eternity.
A circuit. Okay, eternity, there's that. But it's a circuit. Circular means a circuit, which means what? Something that was, is, and will be again. It's a repetitive thing. It's a circular thing. You realize that there is an interesting site in Israel based off of the word Gilgal. I didn't plan to talk about it, but now that I am, I will. Anybody ever seen this? That's called the Gilgal Rephaim, the circle of the giants. And it's in Gilgal Rephaim in Israel. And what's real interesting about it, many people have pointed out, and this is an actual structure in Israel. I'm trying to find just a big, it's not real big, but you get the idea. Control and scroll. Oh, okay. See, we got tech support tonight. All right. So you've got this structure. Now, people don't know what it is, but the history is it's built by the giants. It's built by the Rephaim, and it's ancient, and it's been there. A lot of folks have pointed out that the pattern of this fits the description of Plato's description of Atlantis and its concentric rings. Now, I don't know where you want to get off into that stuff or not tonight, but, it's interesting. The idea of Atlantis and Plato was an advanced civilization with advanced technology from the gods. Okay, wheels within wheels from Ezekiel could be a description, the Gilgal within Gilgal, right? And the idea here is that, of course, in Plato's Atlantis, what happened to it? There was a flood that subsumed it because of the displeasure of God, right? Or the gods, according to Plato. Interesting, all right? Because that's really kind of what happened in the flood of Noah, right? So anyway, I know we're rambling off track here again, but that's why we have this fun study where we can do that. Gilgal Rephaim, the word means a circle or something that comes back around. In the Hebrew mind, Gilgal means come back around. The reason they were circumcised at Gilgal was because they had to come back around. They hadn't done it. They were circumcised. Then
Giant coming back again.
there you go. See, putting it all together before I get there. I am going to suggest to you Gilgal Rephaim as the giants are coming back again. They did. I don't know if it is or not. Yeah, I know what you mean. I just don't know. It's whether that's a portal or not. But I do believe the giants are coming again, and I believe that's from Scripture, and I've shown you that in multiple places. I believe Gilgal Rephaim simply means the same thing. A return. That wheel comes around. What goes around comes around. It's huge. Nothing new under the sun. That's what Solomon said, isn't it? Wisest man. He says, "What thing that it's stone." Yeah, it's piles of stone. I don't know. I just have to go look and see. I'd love to go see it. I got to get back to Israel. That wasn't on my last itinerary last time. But the whole idea here is the return of the giants, which is what's been, I believe, prophesied in the Bible on multiple occasions. Why do I think that? Well, Gilgamesh. If Mesh is a hero, which means giant, Gilgamesh means what? Returning giant. So if they found a body and they like to dabble with DNA and we're looking for a beast that is not, yet shall ascend out of the abyss, and the abyss is the deep. And according to the Assyrian legend, the deep was off the coast there, Babylon, and the portal entryway was through the Euphrates, which is where Gilgamesh was buried.
Well, you know, Barbara Streisand had her dead dog cloned 3 times now. So.
Well, I didn't know that actually, but I guess she said that there's celebrities cloning pets over and over. So we know they're cloning. I mean, we've seen the sheep and the cows and the glowing pigs and all these sort of things they've done. I don't put it past them to mess with anything they find, guys. I mean, I know it sounds nuts. I really do. 20 years ago, I wouldn't have said this. Today, I'm going, hey, who knows? But because so many scholars have that speculation, it's interesting that it may be a possibility. I don't know. It could be something totally different. I don't know. I'm just trying to throw out different things that we've come across. Here's the deal. If we go to our passage, we see that this beast shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. And the word here in the Greek, of course, is the abuso. All right. Now, we already saw that he comes out of the bottomless pit, right? What's his name? How many remember Apollyon? Go to Revelation 9 and 11. Now, there's another memory peg for you. Did something bad happen on 9/11? Yeah. It says here, if you look at the text, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit or of the abyss, whose name in the Hebrew is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon or Apollo. So the question is, what does that mean? If you highlight the Greek, it means a destroyer. It means destruction. Destroy or destruction. What does perdition mean? Same thing. Destruction, destroy, and destruction. What's that? Sure. Destroying angel. It's all about destruction. What happened on 9/11? Destruction. See, it's a very important. Yep. See, I know that stuff's coincidental, but sure makes some great memory pegs for you. Remember your scripture references, don't it? Now, Apollyon. Listen to me. I know I'm out in the weeds here. Apollyon, Apollo. Is there any remote similarities there? Now, you can't build a whole lot of doctrine on just similar sounds. I get that. I'm not trying to say that. But where does the name Apollo? Apollo is the Greek pronunciation of the god Apollo. Remember the god Apollo in Greek? But who are the Apollo? Well, we discussed them. You may remember them better as the 7 sages. You remember when we discussed the 7 sages? They were, in the Babylonian mythology, the 7 gods, quote, quote, that arose out of the sea and taught them civilization and technology. And the first Apkallu was Oannes, which was also the fish god, which was Dagon and all that, and these different ones. So I'm trying to put a lot of things together here. If Nimrod is Gilgamesh, if there is a return of the giant, if he was not, now he is, all right. If it is a repeat, if he ascends out of the abyss, which is the channel through the Euphrates, if those angels are bound there in the Euphrates, and if the Apkallu came from the Euphrates, came from there as well, then may Apollo be the Apkallu. And may that all tie back together to the beast who comes up out of that pit is an Apkallu. All right. Well, here we got Google Earth. The request is, please pull up the Persian Gulf. Whoops, spun the Earth around quite a bit. All right. So for those that want to see this, remember Babylon is here on the rivers that are coming out of the Euphrates. Let's go to Euphrates. All right, Euphrates River. All right, there we go. We've got the Euphrates, we got the Tigris. The Euphrates runs all the way down here into the Persian Gulf. All right. Now, according to the Babylonian legend, now this is all the Babylonia. It's the land between 2 rivers, Shinar. Remember the word Shinar means 2 rivers. Mesopotamia means between 2 rivers. And remember, Washington, D.C. is built between 2 rivers. That's right. The Potomac. Remember when we talked about the word Potomac, you know, that George Washington crossed? What's that word mean? River. Potomac, the Potomac River. Potomac means river, and river is river. You know, river, 2 rivers. So anyway, you wanted to know something about what now? Okay. Into the Pacific. Well, I don't know. For you folks at home, he wants to know where the Marianas Trench is. So let's take a look and see. That's opposite side of the world, looks like. Yeah, it looks like it's the opposite side of the world. Well, unless it runs through. Yeah. Don't think that one's it. But in any event, there is that legend. So when we come back, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the Apkallu and the potential for this. And then we're going to talk about perdition. And we're going to talk about Judas. We're going to talk about the Antichrist, and we're going to try to start weaving some of that sons of perdition together and see where it takes us. So let's take a quick break. For you folks at home, I'll put on the show, and we got some tunes for you here that are accompanying that. We've got our clock, and let's take a quick break. Okay. I forgot to turn the switch on for the slideshow. Oh well. Okay, well, the time is up, and if you're still with us, we appreciate that. All right, well, continue to enjoy the fellowship and food, and I'll just skip back off, and we'll go do our thing. Before the break, I was really just out in a highly speculative waters. I know that. It's just as you're trying to ponder what could these things be, everybody's got an idea, and one's just as good as the other. The Bible, to my knowledge, does not really teach a reincarnation theme. And however, I will tell you that it is a very common Jewish conception amongst certain sects of Judaism. But I do not believe that that's what the Bible teaches about that. Yeah, Brent says, is there a way we can make it where you can see the PowerPoint slides with the pics? Yeah, but I didn't turn the switch on, so that's part of the problem. But I'll figure out a way where maybe I can post that slideshow on the website or something where people can enjoy it maybe. I don't know. We'll have to check and see if it'll play that way. But there are those that say, well, maybe Nero's reincarnated, maybe Judas Iscariot's reincarnated, maybe Nimrod's reincarnated. I don't hold that view, but I wouldn't put it past a DNA resurrection of sorts. If there was some of the folks that are, you realize that most of these folks, now I don't want to get too conspiratorial again, but they're Satanist folks. When you're talking about these elite groups, you know, the spirit cookings and all that, and they're all tied with the political elite, and they're hanging out at Bohemian Groves, and all that sounds nuts. It sounds conspiratorial, but it's all pure Satanism. And they're in government high places. And so the idea that that technology may be available is not outside the realm of possibility. For instance, you know, one of the things I was piddling on this week, and I don't really intend to spend any real time on it, but just to show you what I'm talking about here. You know, I've showed you the patent and stuff that Microsoft had, right? And you may not be familiar with this one. This one came out in 2018. But notice it's routing policies for biological hosts. Are you familiar with that one? And so what the deal is AT&T developed this patent here, and the idea is how to control brains and pass information on. The idea is to turn you into your own internet, where instead of having to read a computer, you simply download straight to your brain. But because the network is in place, you can also control brains and one another. And it's kind of a bizarre thing. But it's talking about routing between biological hosts. Corey, do you have any insight into that in any greater detail from a technical standpoint? Okay. Just wondering from a technical standpoint. But if you look here at the other publications related to this, it's, for instance, brain-machine interface, past, present, future, mind control by cell phone, non-invasive neuroprosthesis, mind control goes wireless, you know, and it is. You'll see their diagrams, and it's talking about a network of neural brains that basically can communicate and control the body. See, the brain controls the body, folks. And so there's actually patents in place for all this stuff. And so what was interesting to me is I was starting to study doing some research on some of those deals. Because what they're trying to do is patent you. The ability to implant and communicate and control bodily functions through brain neural networks. That sounds like science fiction crazy stuff. But that was 2 years ago that it was approved. They filed it, the technology they've been developing over the last couple of decades. They filed the patent in 2015. It was approved in 2018. And then you got, of course, Gates and his chip in 2020. You put all that, What it is you put all those different things together and work them as a system, and you've got something pretty scary. And just the concept is scary. But what I started noticing is I started looking into some of the previous patents, because it gives you a history of the patents building up to it. And what was interesting was there's several patents with this biological host concept. And what's interesting is there's a disclaimer on the patents that U.S. government has partial rights to this patent, has funded the research, and this patent is owned not just by AT&T and not just by Microsoft, but by U.S. government, who helped fund the research. Well, why is the U.S. government funding research on? I mean, you just got to. Well, you can go back to CIA programs on all that stuff. Yes, exactly. And DARPA, all those guys. So anyway, when I throw these weird things out that I know out in the weeds, there was a time I wouldn't have touched any of that with a 10-foot pole from a teaching perspective. But just from an awareness perspective, I'm looking at what's going on in the world, and it's really nuts. And that technology, according to the ancient sources, came from the angelic realm, the fallen realm. And according to the Bible, that realm comes back. And according to what we're seeing, you know what I'm saying, there's several different pieces of the puzzle that all seem to come together, which caused me to start reevaluating some of these verses about the beast descending out of the pit. And what did that mean in the ancient context? Well, that was the Gulf, the Euphrates and the portal, and then that was the Apkallu, which sounds like Apollo, maybe, and then Gilgamesh, return of the hero, and the Gilgamesh for Ephraim, the return of the giants. And so it's not outside the realm of possibility. But I don't want to spend any more time on it. I just wanted to give you something to ponder beyond the norm. That doesn't mean it's any valid. But understand that the Apkallu, if you remember this conversation, we talked about this. They were called the seven sages in history, if you want to look this up, in the Assyrian Babylonian mythologies, who arose up out of the abyss to teach Babylonians civilization and technology. They are also known in the Bible, the Watchers, are tied to the Apkallu. So in the book of Daniel, when you talk about the Watchers in Babylon and the idea of the Watchers in Enoch that ascended upon the mountain, they were the ones that get it. And so he does. If you go into, and I'm glad you brought that up. For those of you at home, he was talking about the book of Enoch brings out the angels and a list of the technologies they taught. And I'm going somewhere with that actual idea, so I'm glad you kind of brought that up. The Enoch talks about Azazel and Shemahazah that brought the technologies down, and they were part of the Watchers, which are spoken of in Daniel. But they introduced technology, or what the ancients called, they didn't use the word technology. They used the word craft. All right, they introduced crafts. A craftsman was someone skilled in a craft. All right, and so the idea was you had metal craft. The metal workers could make swords and shields and stuff like that. You had different building crafts, mason, stone cutting, stone crafting. You had all these different crafts. Well, yeah, witchcraft is another one, I guess you could say. But from a historical standpoint, remember when we did our study of the seven churches, we studied about each of the towns that are named. And what I tried to do, and I know not all of you were here for that, that was quite some time back when we were in those chapters. But what we did is, we talked about the patron deities in those particular towns, and what we talked about what the town was known for as far as what they produced. If they produced a dye or an ointment or a healing salve or those different things. And I also brought out to you that the ancient believers had a problem, both Jew and Christian, in the ancient world. Now, the Jews were able to get exempted from it. And when the Christians first became believers, they were Jews, and they were considered Jews, and it was okay. But as the traditional Jews began to disavow the new Christian faith, and they would call for a separation from them to the government, to the Romans. And then ultimately there was a decree that says, okay, you guys don't have the protections that we negotiated with the Jews because they're saying you're not really part of their deal. What protections am I talking about? It made it very difficult for them to buy or sell. Because you see, in the ancient world, if you had there was tributes to be paid to the emperor. The member of the guilds, yes, the gods. You see, if you were going to work in a particular profession or craft, then you had to be a member of the guild, right, for that particular craft. And the guild had a patron god who revealed the craft, who they believed taught them the craft, and you had to honor that God as part of a member of that guild. You guys all know this. All right, so I'm not telling you nothing you don't know. I'm just bringing to your remembrance things and showing you where this is going to go. You see, you could not buy or sell, and that's why they were in a bad way. They were persecuted. They were starving. They couldn't feed their families. They couldn't earn a living because in order to be a member of that guild, there had to be sacrifices and tributes paid to that patron god who happened to simply be the fallen angel that had introduced that technology. We see all that in ancient times and we forget all that, but see, all that's coming back. See, because one of the things the beast does is no man can buy or sell unless he has the mark. It's that same guild type of to be a patron of that guild, you had to be an idolater. You had to engage in idolatry in order to learn even the secrets. I mean, if you were going to be trained as an apprentice, they're not going to teach you the secrets of how to forge a sword. They're not going to teach you the secrets of, whatever it is that their particular skill set, that the stone crafting and the geometry and the measurements. If you go back to, I went blank. Help me out. Geometry guy, Greek. Yeah, he's got these laws and isosceles triangles and Pythagoras. Thank you very much, Pythagoras. Well, I knew somebody would come up with it. Pythagoras. He held that geometry was the secret of the gods, and they wouldn't. He said, let no one come in here that's not versed in the mysteries of this, that, or the other. And so in the ancient world, it was a very clear-cut idea that the gods had given them these secrets, these technologies, these crafts, the ability, the mathematics to use it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's the same thing we pursue today. That's the same thing when you see these people hoping aliens will land and teach them technology. They're wanting the same thing, right? Same sort of stuff. So even they couldn't work in ancient times without that guild membership, that idolatrous worship. That's exactly what's going to happen under the beast system. So I just want you to make that connection. And where did those guilds have their origins? With those angels, which allegedly were the Apkallu, the watchers, and that's Apollo ascending out of the abyss. And so you're going to see this all coming back again. So let's go back to our text. He says he will send out of this bottomless pit, which again we believe is the abyss, which is a watery thing, not a ground thing, and go into perdition. Now, one of the texts I came across as I was studying this out was in the Greek. This word "go" means to go. It's a verb that appears in what's called an infinitive state, which basically means when he goes forever. All right, he will forever go into perdition. And so we're going to see what the word for perdition is, and when we look at it, it's ruin, it's loss, it's destruction. All right, and notice the Greek word, apolie. See, it's still the same root. Apollo was destruction, perdition. Perdition's the same Greek origins. So I want you to make those connections there as we start looking at perdition. It has to do with destruction. There's a link to Apollo, which may or may not be a link to the Apkallu. That's kind of the thesis that I'm throwing out for pondering. I'm not going to make a doctrine out of it by any stretch, but I mean, it's a Bible study. We're just studying these things out and giving ourselves some things to think about. So what I want to do is go to John. It's funny how John always seems to have something to say that helps us in Revelation, since he wrote both. John 17 and verse 12. I want to bring a character to your mind. This is the prayer of Jesus, and he says this in verse 12. While I was with them in the world, now that's a real key thing, in the world. The word there in the Greek, of course, is cosmos, which has to do with the order, the current world order, if you will. I kept them in thy name. Now he's talking about the disciples. Those that thou gavest me, I have kept, and none of them is lost. I like the sound of that. None of it is lost. But one. One is the son of perdition, the son of destruction, son of Apollo. All right? That the scripture might be fulfilled. So this son of perdition is who? Judas Iscariot. Okay, it's pretty clear that that's Judas Iscariot. So I want to just spend a little bit of time on this idea of son of perdition, son of perdition, son of perdition, son of destruction, son of ruin, son of loss, son of Apollo. Let's take a look. So when did he become this way? There's something very significant that happens in John 13. So let's go to John 13. I want you to take a look at 27. Oh, we'll start 26. They're asking him who's going to betray him, and Jesus says, he it is to whom I shall give a sop when I have dipped it. All right? The sop being simply the bread. Remember when we did our Passover, and you dip in the, okay, that's what they're doing. When I've dipped it. And when he had dipped the sop, he gave it to Judas Iscariot of Simon. It says son of Simon. Now read this next sentence. And after the sop, Satan entered into him. There is a before and an after. What made him the son of perdition, son of destruction? Satan entered into him. Satan entered into him. So here's my question. If you do use some DNA and clone, or even clone a person, clone giant, clone anything, if you're cloning it, was there a soul in there? Because has there been any creation? Or is it just a shell? It seems like it would be just a shell. It'd be like, everybody remember those Star Trek episodes, Spock's brain? And they pull out Spock's brain, and if you're not a Trekkie, you don't get this, but Bones, Dr. McCoy had to have a little remote control and walk Spock around until they could find his brain and put it back in. Oh, that's good stuff right there. Okay. Really? That's just unbelievable, so we'll have to fix it. Spock's brain. Yeah, okay. Movie night, right? There he is. There's Spock. He's had his brain removed by this gal here. And they've removed it via this machine here that gives them wisdom to remove brains, and left him behind. And anyway, they had to go get his brain back. That has absolutely nothing to do with the Bible study. But I was trying to make a point. The idea is, if there is a cloned entity, I've got to wonder, is there anything going on inside it? Or is it just a cloning of the physical form? Functional. I mean, they've proved that with, sheep and goats and pigs and all the other things they clone. But what animates it independently? What makes a son of perdition? If the Antichrist is described, let's go to 2 Thessalonians. If you go to 2 Thessalonians, and we go into chapter 2, we'll just start with verse 1. The man of lawlessness. What are you seeing all around you today? Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and by our gathering together unto him. There's a rapture verse for you. That you be not soon shaken in mind, nor troubled by spirit, nor by word or by letter, as if from us, that the day of Christ is at hand. Let no man deceive you by any means. For, and then there's that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first. Falling away, we could see as apostasy, which is what's happening all around us, a defection. But it also means to catch away. So you might have a double reference going on there. And the man of sin will be revealed, the son of perdition. Son of perdition. Okay, so I've got one out there in Streamland that says, I know that episode. I watched that episode. That was a good episode. It's almost comical. All right. But anyway, this son of perdition is the Antichrist. Everybody with me? What's he do? He opposeth, he exalt himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. What did Nimrod do? Same thing in the rebellion. So the son of perdition, it says that Judas was a son of perdition when Satan entered him. It says it again in Luke. Let's go to Luke. If you go to Luke, and we take a look at verse 22 and 3. So we drop down here, 22 and 3. It says, Then entered Satan into Judas, surname Iscariot, being of the 12, and he went his way and communed with the chief priests and captains, how he might betray him. So, then entered in Satan into Judas. Satan entered. Satan's going to enter and possess whatever the Antichrist is. Whether it's a regular, normal Joe that gets involved in the cult and gets possessed, whether it's a 20-foot, 2-story tall giant that gets, now they may not, I don't know how all the DNA stuff works. They may not recreate him as a giant. They may recreate him small, but he's using those, I don't know. But if it's a shell, it needs to be possessed by something. Something's got to animate it. If it's a artificial intelligence android that's animated by Satan. I mean, I don't know what the beast ultimately is going to be, but I believe the beast is a living being because that's what beast means. Some of us postulate the idea, well, it's going to be an artificial intelligence robot that's going to, I don't know that I'm there yet because the word beast indicates a living being, even though it is wild and uncontrolled and dangerous and all that. And so I suspect that it's going to be something else. It's either going to be, I don't think it's going to have some type of Nephilim genetic component. Now, it may be the aliens land on the ship, and declare, we're your gods, and they exalt one, and the leader becomes the beast. I don't know.
Has already said that they expect aliens, and that when they do arrive, that they're going to be better than us.
Well, of course, I've heard that. The Pope said that. Yes, they're
morally better.
They're going to be morally better. The aliens will be more spiritually advanced because they won't be corrupted like we are. That's the argument and see, that's the argument the Vatican is making. The Pope was saying that, and you guys, you've heard that and brought it up. So, again, back to what all this stuff sounded crazy sometime back, but who's riding the beast? You guys follow? Yeah, you don't call your Vatican telescope Lucifer. That just doesn't make any good sense, does it? So, again, Satan entering is what creates a son of perdition. Remember when the Pharisees and were bickering with Jesus about stuff, and he called them what? He says, "We have Abraham to our father." He says, "Huh. Your father is, let me tell you about your father. He's a liar from the beginning." All right. Now, did that mean that they were physically offspring? No. But they were operating under the influence. All right. Same thing with sons of Belial, sons of Baal. If you go in the Old Testament, it talks about finding certain baseless, worthless fellows, sons of Belial. All right. That means people who are under the influence of Satan to do ill things. What are you seeing these mobs running around doing? You know what they're under the influence of? Satan. All right. So this Antichrist figure is under the influence of Satan, but it's going to be more than just influence. He's going to enter right on in and control this being. And that's why he's the seed of the serpent. Now, here's the thing. The seed implies actual genetics. You guys follow? And the seed of the serpent was introduced during the Nephilim period. That's why I believe there's going to be some Nephilim connection to this Antichrist figure, whether he shows up as an alien or he shows up as a DNA manipulated giant, whether, I don't know, but it's going to have some type of a deal there. So here's the thing I want to bring to your mind. What does the word Satan mean? I mean, that's his name, but what's the word mean? Satan. Accuser. What's the origin of the word? Chaldee. Who's the Chaldeans? Babylonians. The very word comes from where? Babylon. Interesting. Did you make that connection? See, it comes from Babylon. The word means the accuser. Remember, the accuser of the brethren is cast down? All right. What did Judas do when he went and betrayed Jesus? He accused him. So if Satan enters the Antichrist, what will the Antichrist be doing? Accusing. Wonder who he's going to be accusing during the 7-year tribulation period, particularly the last 3.5. The Jewish people. He's going to unite the whole world. The whole world's going to gather against the Jews to destroy them, and that's when the Lord comes back and destroys the enemies, right? Saves them. But see, there's got to be some accusations made. So when you think of things making accusations against the Jews, what word pops to mind? What's it mean to make baseless accusations against the Jews? You're called a anti-Semitic, anti-Semite. The word Semite is based off a root word Shem, which means what? The name, a name. Anti-Semitic. Semitic, it means people of the name. That's what it means. If you're anti, you're against the name. Hello? All right?
In France right now, they've got signs up and they're accusing the whole thing that's going on right now. There's no connection.
Yeah.
But they've got signs up.
Well, that's exactly right. All these protests and people marching around, they've got signs accusing the Jews of stuff. They've got nothing to do with anything, right? What is that spirit? That's the spirit of Antichrist. Remember we talked about the 3 frogs? Anti-Semitic frogs that came out. So what I'm on is we're starting to see all these random pieces and bring them together into this idea of son of perdition. He is an accuser. He is a slanderer. And that's exactly what's going to be taking place. And I believe that spirit's going to praise through this. Now, there is a clue, and I've mentioned this to you before. Judas is a word that means what? Praise. Okay. It's based off the word Judah, which means praised. But he is surnamed. That means he's got another name. Iscariot. Does anybody remember what we talked about on that? It's exactly right. Notice it means the inhabitant of Kerioth. Right? Well, Kerioth is simply a word that means city. So it's Judas of the city, or praise of the city. So what city is the problem here in Revelation? Babylon. Where's the name Satan come from? Babylon. Where's the praise being offered up? To Babylon. All right. All these things come back together. Praise of the city. It means to gather men. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. I'm going to do a search. I'm just going to put in, we'll do a partial search because in English you miss this because English translates it a little different. But the very first time in Scripture that city shows up is in Genesis 14:5, the word Kerioth. See this? If you said, now remember, an em at the back of a Hebrew word is a plural ending, right? Everybody with me? So really what you got here is Kerioth, right? Judas is means from or of, Kerioth, the city. So I'm going to highlight, first of all, let me show you the verse. What verse are we talking about? In the 14th year came Chedorlaomer and the kings that were with him, and they smote the Rephaim. Who are they? Giants. In Ashtaroth Karnaim. And they smote the Zuzims. Who are they? Oh yeah, in Ham. And they smote the Emims. Who are they? Giants. In Shabbat. Notice the very first reference to Kerioth as a city is the passage about the giants. These are when they come in and they steal Lot, Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham has to chase them down, right? Now, you'll see this throughout Scripture. Notice this next verse. Sarah died in Kirjath Arba. Well, we got a J in there now, so most Americans are going to look at that and go, okay, well, that's something different. There's a J. Same word. The problem is there a J in Hebrew? No, there is no J in Hebrew. What sound would that have in Hebrew? E, I, E. It's a more vowelish. So it's going to be Kerioth Arba. What's the word Arba mean? 4. Arba is 4. The city of 4. What was the city of 4? Huh? Okay, you could say it's a city of the earth. 4 is a representation of the earth. It was the city of Anak. I saw the children of Anak. Let's see if I can find this here. Anakim, Emim, tall and great. Anakims, Emims, destroyed them. Well, I'm trying to figure out where I can get the Anakims. The name, here we go. Joshua. And the name of Hebron before was Kerioth Arba. That's where Sarah passed away, which was a great man amongst the Anakims. He was a Gadol, and the land had rest from war. So city of 4. So Hebron, where David first set up his rule before he moved into Jerusalem, was a town of the Anakim, the capital of the giants. And Kerioth is mentioned repeatedly as a city of giants throughout Scripture. Very first references about that. Now you've got Judas Iscariot. See what I'm saying? And he's the son of perdition, and Antichrist is going to be a son of perdition. So I know there's threads that I think we can weave the tapestry, but we can maybe not all see the same picture, but there's threads to be woven here. Where they all lead, I don't know, but I am going to suggest to you that this giant theme, this Nephilim theme, is rampant through here if you will follow it, and it's coming back and has something to do with this. That's tied in there, that praise of the city, the praise of the root. If we go to, let's just go to, oops, that was Anak. Let me go back to Ker. Let's just look up for a city here. I'm going to click that, and we'll go to Kerathim. All right. A plain, a double city. Well, I told you that's a plural, right? So it's made of two words. Shaveh, which means plain, and Keria, which is city. Kiryat, Iskariot. Notice that's also in the sense of flooring. Now, I know that you're thinking, where in the world is he going now? Flooring is something you lay down. When you come in to put down flooring, you're laying down floors, aren't you? Laying down flooring. When you put up a foundation, you're laying down a foundation, right? And the word for foundation and flooring has to do, in the Hebrew, with the act of throwing something down, of putting something down. We think of, if I use the word foundation or floor, you think of the concrete concept of a floor or a slab of concrete, right? In the Hebrew, it's an action-oriented thing. When they think of foundation floor, it's the act of putting something down. That's why in the Bible, the word for conception is the same word for foundation. Now, in the Western mind, you're going to say, okay, well, they're conceiving a child, they're founding a child. They're founding a child. That makes sense, but that's really not what's in the Hebrew mind when they're thinking about it. Something's being thrown down that makes a child. It has to do with the seed being transmitted, all right? Throwing down the deal. So I'm just laying that for you now. I don't know if we'll get to tie it all together yet or not, but keep in mind the idea of a foundation and flooring. It relates to a city because cities are founded, and it has to do with throwing something down. And it also has the same relationship with the conception. And all those will help you put this all together. So Keria means to gather men. If we go here, I'm going to just click 71. It means to, if you're building a city, the idea of building a city is to gather men together, right? What happened in Babylon? God said, I want you to spread out through all the earth. And what did they say? No, we're going to build a city, lest we be scattered abroad. They come together and build a tower. That's right. So as you come together, that's the idea of gathering men together. Now, Kira is also a root that means to land. Because remember, foundation, flooring, the foundation of a city, gathering together. It means to, Kira root in Hebrew, means to land, to alight upon, to meet, or to encounter. A landing encounter. Ooh, I don't know. That may be interesting. Was there a city that had, maybe some close encounters and landings there? I know there was a ziggurat with a bed at the top. You guys remember all that? We talked about that. So Babylon keeps popping up all the time. Praise of the city. Praise of the city is Judas Iscariot's name. Praise of the Babylon. What city? If you go back into the Old Testament to see where Kiriat's at, it's giant cities. Praise of the giants, their cities, their buildings, their structures, their. Isn't it amazing? And Judas Iscariot's in this thing all the way. There's all tall towers in major cities. There's also all places around the world that have ruins of large things, like the Gilgal Rephaim and Stonehenge and all these different things. So perdition is destruction. Apollo is destruction. Apkalu perhaps ties to it. It's interesting to me, and this is just an aside, but remember when we discussed NASA? What's the word NASA mean in Hebrew? Nasa. It's really interesting. Now, we know NASA is National Aeronautics Space Administration, right? But in Hebrew, Nasa means to arise or to ascend, or to exalt, to lift up into the heavens. Yep. And they're all named after false gods. Particularly, the moon program was the Apollo program, which son of destruction we're discussing right here. And that was then. In the 60s, it was Apollo. But you realize they're doing that program again. There's a new moon mission, right? You guys remember what are they calling it? Oh, you need to go look this up. This time it's Artemis. Now, who's Artemis? Yeah, we've covered it before. Yeah, no. I keep throwing all this Greek mythology at you, right? Yes, it's female. Artemis is a female. Good. Yes, Yes. See, yeah, Artemis is a goddess in Ephesus, had multiples. Artemis was, in Greek mythology, Apollo's sister. You may not recognize the name Artemis, but you may have known her by her other name, Diana. Great is Diana of the Ephesians. Remember the riots of Paul when they were going to, the silversmith did him harm and all that. They brought him all in there, and these men are teaching another way, and everybody, we're going to lose our craft. And great is Diana of the Ephesians. Great Artemis. Artemis is the word. So it's real interesting that we're resurrecting that. Now, you want to have some more fun with this? How did you get to the moon in the Apollo mission? What was the rocket? No? What's it called? Saturn V rocket. Saturn rocket. Now, Saturn, Satan, Saturn's the morning star, that Don Lucifer, light bearer, morning star. But Saturn has another name in Greek mythology called Kronos. If you ever heard Kronos, you're talking about Saturn. What's Kronos? Yeah, right. So he fathered these different ones. Poseidon's who you were thinking of. Yeah, but Kronos is also known for something else. What's the word Kronos root of time? So the idea of Father Time. Remember, you ever see Father Time New Year's Day and Father Time? What's Father Time carrying around with him all the time? Yes, scythe. Why is that? When your time's up, you're going to get reaped, right? Time's up. All right. Remember death. All right. So it's an angel of death, if you will, carrying this still. Well, Kronos in the Greek mythologies castrated his father. That's why he's carrying the scythe. His father's name was Uranus, which means what? Heaven. So, you see, there was an eternal condition, but at the fall, dying ye shall die. What got introduced? A time limit. Kronos, castrating the seed of heaven, is part of the basis of that myth, is when you start packing it down there. So anyway, that's the rocket that the Apollo mission, the destruction mission, went on Satan's destruction rocket. You can't make this up, but that's what all this means if you look at it. Now they're doing a new mission, which is Artemis. Artemis was his sister, Diana, who is a warriorish goddess. The hunt. The Amazons probably had something to do with her. But she was the goddess of the hunt and warfare, and so was Nimrod, was a god of the hunt, right? You know what their rocket they're using now is? See, because NASA's not building them anymore. They contracted out to the private sector. And Elon Musk just successfully did that. Did you hear that just a couple weeks ago? What was the name of that rocket? The Dragon. Saturn is Satan, and that was then, but now we're using, let's just come right out front and say it. It's the Dragon, all right? We're going to exalt ourselves. NASA lifting him up and go with Artemis, the goddess of war. All that's interesting, and all that has to do, every one of those terms has to do with destruction, perdition. I don't know why in the world we would name our programs that. So anyway, back to our text. What in the world were we going? So as we look at this in Revelation 17,
Have you seen, I wonder if you know anything about this, the name of his child,
name of what child?
Elon Musk?
No.
This is the name. First that X there.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Zazie?
I think they pronounce it Ash. I'm not sure.
I have no idea. That's no, I've not seen that.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that's a good
Well,
question.
Not real letters.
They didn't tattoo his face, did he? That's weird. All right. So anyway, the people who are wandering here, this beast, whoever he is, he ascends out of the bottomless pit, and he will go into perdition, that everlasting destruction. And we just spent some time just tracking down perdition and all the different links it has in the text. But notice, they that dwell on the earth shall wonder. It's those earth dwellers. How many times have we talked about these earth dwellers so far? Esau was a man of the field. Edom, Esau, earth dweller. Jacob was a man of the tents. The idea of this earth dweller. They shall wonder. Now, I want you to see here is the word for wonder is the same word John had up here when he was wondering. Right? So, in other words, John was puzzled. Now, listen to this. John was puzzled at the woman. The world's puzzled with the beast. John's puzzled with the woman. The world, the earth dwellers, are puzzled with the beast. In other words, the focus of attention for John was what happened to the church. What is this? The focus of the world is who is like this beast? Who can make war with him? He is awesome. All right, notice those attention. How do we know this is a problem? Whose names were not written in the book of life. The book from, that's where we're heading, from the foundation of the world. Again, cosmos, the world order, current arrangement, foundation. A lot of times, if you hear foundation of the world, you have a tendency to think of the beginning, creation. And I think that's valid, but there may be some parallel meanings. You could easily say the overthrow of the world in certain deals, because the idea of throwing down something. If I highlight here in the Greek, I'm going to go ahead and click the word for foundation, and let's go into the dictionary. It's katabole, which means a deposition of founding. Here we go. Remember what I told you about conceive? The idea of conceive or conception, a foundation. How in the world do you get those two things to mean the same thing? Well, because it's a throwing down of something. See, if you go to this root, katabala, which means to what? What's the root mean? To throw down or to cast down. You see, the idea of this foundation of the world can also be translated the casting down of the world, the overthrow of the world. When did that happen? Well, that's getting into the primordial past. See, did God create the world defective? It became that way, didn't it? That would be an overthrow. Who's overthrows? Rebels. Only a rebel. See, what I'm getting at is there's the standard interpretation, which I believe is accurate, don't get me wrong. But there's also the potential for deeper meanings that are clues behind this text as well. So there's just some things to consider as you're reading this at, quote, quote, face value. The idea of this, a foundation of the world and the world order.
I also think like foundation and see the kind of like they both kind of mean like the beginning of something.
Mm-hmm.
Build on a foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you can see this, the building is the beginning of life.
Right. And that's the typical, the deal is a foundation is a beginning. But if the foundation, let's look at it this way, if foundation can also be interpreted as an overthrow, does that begin something too? Still a beginning. I mean, it is the beginning of Satan's kingdom. All right. And then when Jesus come and put the stop on Satan, what happened? It was the beginning of his kingdom. You guys follow? So it's interesting when you read this, you can actually see 3 or 4 different data sets, depending on the context of your verse, that may come to light. I'm not going to go through all of them, but if you just do a quick, notice their names are not written in the book of life. Anybody have any idea what the book of life is? I'm glad you said that. Anybody got any other idea? What's taught? Has anybody had any teaching on the book of life in church? Okay, when you get saved, your name is written down in the book of life. Anything else? Yeah, there's the Lamb's Book of Life. There's a book of remembrance. Every tear in the bottle. Every time you think upon God, there's a book of remembrance. There's a record of your works, which you'll be judged out of at some point. But see, it's a kind of a nebulous topic if you think about it, because what they say is not, it says, rejoice that your names are written in the Lamb's Book of Life, or in the Book of Life, not that your names are written in heaven. Don't worry about the demons. Rejoice about that. But Jesus says in the churches, him that overcomes, I will not block it out of the Book of Life. That means they were in and then they were out. It's kind of weird. And you suggested it's the Bible. You see, I find that interesting because I kind of wonder that myself. You see, because one of the things that came out, Scripture talks about the Word being life to all your flesh, and my words are life. The Bible being a tree of life, the Word is a tree of life, all those sort of things. So I've speculated that the Bible itself may be the book of life you're inscribed in. And one of the reasons that I come up with that, anybody remember the Bible codes? Is that right? Yeah, there's a lot of people have played with it. Basically, it's an equal distance letter sequence where you count so many, every 50th letter spells out a word or whatever the formula is. You realize that with all the letters in the Bible, you could have billions of permutations, combinations of mathematical sequencing, right? When they were first becoming computerized and known, rabbis have known about them for ever, but they were forced to count by hand, by candlelight, and they didn't get real far, right? When the computers came, people started to use them. Now, I think some people try to use them wrong or, do things they shouldn't be doing, don't get me wrong. And, you don't try to force an interpretation. But I do think that there is probably something there. Because when it first came out, there was a quick little program somebody wrote and put out. And my dad and myself got that program. Now, I never found anything, but he did. He ran it, and he found his name intersected with the college he went to, intersected with the word pastor, which he was, intersected with the date they got. I mean, there was all this stuff in there. And the fact that he was able to find himself in there made me go, he's written in the book. That makes me wonder, could the Bible be, because it is a supernatural book, could it be that we're all encoded in the very text of the letter somehow in these sequencing? It endures forever. That would be just remarkable. That may be pure speculation. That may be way off the track. I don't know. The Torah is the only one that I know that they've played with, and even that, there's probably enough billions combinations with that. Yeah, no kidding. But I do know that they have found those sequences that list out the whole lineage of David. Where I don't remember the passage. I didn't plan to talk about this tonight. I'd have to go research it back out. But I do know that they found, and it's in order. I mean, it's just tons of stuff. So it's not beyond the realm possibility that it's the Bible itself. That's just something I'll throw out there as a deal. But the Bible mentions the book of life a few times. I'm going to hit you just a few verses, and we're going to get ready to kind of wrap up here. But book of life. Let's just look at some of the verses. I entreat thee also, true yokefellow, help those women which labored with me in the gospel. With Clement also and with others, my fellow laborers, whose names are in the book of life. I think it's interesting that the very first reference to the book of life has to do with the gospel. And that's something. You don't hear it again. That's the only time it's mentioned. The rest of the time is all Revelation. He that overcometh shall be clothed in white raiment, and I will not blot out his name out of the book of life. Smear out, erase, or pardon. but I will confess him before the Father and angels. Here's talking about the beast in Revelation 13. All that dwell upon the earth shall worship him. Who will worship him? Those whose names are not written in the book of life, slain from the foundation of the world. That's an interesting thing to ponder, isn't it? Now, I've always, you've always read that like, well, this was planned before the world was ever created. That but it says he was slain from the foundation away from the foundation of the world. It could be that his slaying was the overthrow of a world. Different ways to look at it. Then there's the passage we're looking at right now. Then you're going to see the small and the great gathered, and the books are open, and they're judged. And whoever's not in the book of life gets what? Lake of fire. Those that worketh an abomination or maketh a lie. Only those come into the heaven are those written in the Lamb's book of life. So you got a lot of things there with the book of life, but I wanted you to see that most all of it's in Revelation. We don't get a whole lot of information on the book of life under that phrase. So it's interesting. Foundation of the world. Isn't that so? Yeah, we don't find an Old Testament reference, do we? It's something to do with that new covenant, that gospel. So I'm saying the very first verse is the gospel written in the book of life. So there's definitely some interesting things to consider. Let's do this one. Foundation of the world. That may be fulfilled, which was spoken of the prophet. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things which have been kept secret from the foundation of the world. Now, I've always read that like, okay, he's keeping a secret that's been secret since the very beginning of time, before the world was founded. But you could also read it, he's been keeping this secret from the overthrow of the world. He's keeping it from the usurpers, keeping this secret from the rebels that overthrew the world. I mean, there's different ways that could play out. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, Come, ye blessed of the Lord, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. Okay, could be prepared from the very beginning of the creation of the earth. Could have been prepared at the overthrow of Satan's world. It's got those double references all through here. The blood of all the prophets which were shed from the foundation of the world. Okay, that from the very beginning, maybe Abel was a prophet and got slain from the very beginning, or maybe Satan's overthrow is causing all the. So you could alternate back and forth between who overthrew who at which point, and it goes all the way through these foundations of the world. So I'm not going to read through all those right now, but those are some different things that we would see encoded in the text that I think are kind of interesting. We've still got some more ground to cover to try to tie this together before we move on. But I think we're done for tonight. That's a good stopping place because that leads me into my next little passage. Whew. So we made it through another night. Congratulations. Well done. Who would like to close us out with a quick word of prayer? Okay. Yes. Amen. Amen.
Thank you for joining us for another teaching broadcast of Zion's Roar Ministries featuring your host, Rick Wagner. We hope you enjoyed today's broadcast and that there burns within you a hunger for the Word of God. Zion's Roar Ministries is a prophetic teaching ministry found online at zionsroarministries.com. Until next time, keep looking up. Jesus is coming soon.